Hi, welcome to PunchlineGloucester.com. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sector, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's punchline. But before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and we really couldn't do the show without them. Okay, let's meet this week's panel. We've got Richard Graham, who was the MP for Gloucester for 14 years until the recent general election where he lost his seat to Labour. In his time in Parliament, Richard worked under 5 different prime ministers with various envoys, championing the city regeneration, its history and its business community. He's the chairman of the Gloucester History Festival, so we'll find out what's happening next there of that successful event and what also is Richard going to do next. Next, we have Alistair Cunningham, OBE, is the Chief Executive of Tewkesbury Borough Council. He's responsible for a budget of £65 million, 220 staff, providing services to over 98,000 people. This year, the council decided to rebrand to North Gloucestershire Borough Council, so we'll find out why and how that's going. Also, we'll be looking into the garden communities at Ashchurch and also all the work that's going on in the Foxwell village as well. And finally, last not least, we've got Priti Diniz. She's the MD and founder of Priti Smart Business Solutions. The company helps businesses win work the pretty smart way. You see what I did there? She's specializing in bid writing, bid management. They have worked with companies like Siemens Energy, SES, Balfour BT, Total Energies, and many more. So we'll find out all about the business. And I'd like to ask her for her top 3 tips on writing a bid as well. I'll just throw that into the mix. Okay, panel, let's see, and everybody else, let's see what's making the headlines, courtesy of the BBC today. Okay, here we go. The Times. Workers' bill set to help unions raise Labour cash. The Guardian, UN says Israel deliberately fired on its peacekeepers. The Sun, we're here for you. The Metro, hammered but Florida dodges the worst case scenario. The Financial Times, HSBC's Elbrany looks at shredding senior bankers in bid to save 300 million. I hope I said that right. The Eye, carers set for pay rise under new Rhino law. The Daily Telegraph, private hospitals to rescue the NHS. The Daily Mail, Reeves tax hike plan that will cost billions. The Mirror, smiling, caring, hugging, Kate is back. The Daily Express, impossible choice to heat or eat. And the Daily Star, Del Boy, save our gits and plonkers. Okay, let's go over to the panel and see what they picked out. If I can find my little cursor that's disappeared. There we go. Okay, Richard, let's start with you this morning. Thanks for joining us. What have you picked out from the papers?
Well, Mark, great to see the Princess of Wales dominating so many of the front pages of the newspapers with a winning smile and lots of discussions with people suffering from cancer. I think that'll be a very popular read for many. On the more serious side of news around the world, obviously continuing angst over what's happening in Israel, Palestine and Lebanon. But I think domestically, the story that catches my eye, certainly in the online papers a lot, is continuing discussions about what might or might not happen in the budget. And this will affect us all in different ways. So I think discussions about the possible raising of capital gains tax and the fact that if you raise it by more than a tiny amount, it will probably cost actually HMRC money. I think that's interesting. And then secondly, of course, quite a lot of discussion about changes to pension arrangements, the doctors in particular urging the Chancellor not to make changes about tax-free lump sums. So I think all of this shows that 20 days before the budget, quite a lot of big decisions haven't been made, and there's still a huge amount of discussion going on, which will cause, I think, a bit of uncertainty in the business and wider community.
Going there on one of the papers actually that caught my eye as well, which which I'll bring Alistair in as well, or all of you really, is this was about the cost of care, and obviously looking at maybe making it mandatory to increase the care workers' pay package, and obviously it all depends on how much the government gives the people that provide the care. What's your view on that?
Well, Mark, if you're asking me, I think this can always be a difficult balance because on the one hand, of course, everyone would like to see care workers getting more. It's an incredibly important job and should be highly valued. But at the same time, that means that care bills will shoot up, which will be difficult both for the local authorities like the county council, but also for individuals who are paying care for elderly parents or grandparents. So there's a real difficulty, I think, of trying to satisfy everybody on this. And that's the balance that if the Chancellor does make changes, she's going to have to try and strike.
Okay, thanks very much. Priti, I'm going to bring you in on this very quickly. Obviously, you're a small business. Are you worried what's coming down the tracks for the budget?
I am. I mean, for me, I am brand new in this, and so I'll keep my eyes open to see what's going to, how it's going to affect me. An open view, really.
Okay, I suppose
That's,
it's much way. Try to
I
stay
mean,
positive is the
yeah,
thing, is it really?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, let's go over to Alistair. Let's go back to the newspapers. Thanks for that, Richard. Alistair, what have you picked out from the papers, please?
I think I've been looking at the storm Milton, hitting, hurricane coming into Florida and the absolute devastation that's caused, and that's on the basis that it was predicted that, at a level 5, and it's actually dropped down to 3. So instead of the 15-foot storm surges, they only got 5 to 10, only 5 to 10 feet. So it's a millions of people out. Electricity, a number of people are, being killed by it, and it's that bigger issue that it ties into about the impact of warming and climate change, that you've got warmer oceans, so more water evaporates, warmer air, which can accommodate more moisture. And then, of course, it hits land and deposits huge amounts of rain, and also clearly fierce winds and pressure changes. Now, that's Florida, but in Gloucester, in Gloucestershire, in Tewkesbury, we have seen over the recent years a serious increase in both what they call fluvial, river flooding, which used to be something that happened occasionally, now happens multiple times in a year. But also what we had a few weeks ago was that pluvial, the flash floods, which is very hard to predict and control. And I think we just have to accept that with the warming, we're going to get more of this sort of extreme weather events, and that's just on the rain side, not heat and cold. So I think it's not a wake up call, because I think we know it's here, but it's that the implications of that for us, particularly with the river systems running through Gloucestershire.
It struck me quite surprising, actually, how many people in Florida don't actually have insurance for flooding as well. They can't get it. In Tewkesbury, do they get, can they get insurance for the flooding there? Happens so frequently?
A lot of people don't have insurance now. If you think of your, and I leave Priti out of this, but for the rest of us in our younger days, when the budget didn't stretch, when we were young, and you're living in rented accommodation, you probably didn't have insurance, or you moved into your first home. People make these dreadful, situations in terms of deciding where they can spend their money. But what people don't know as well, that there is government-backed schemes to top up. People think because we flood, we can't get insurance. And so what we're doing all the time is pushing to say you can get insurance and you won't be charged extreme amounts, because there was a government scheme set up, I think, by the last government in terms of managing this. And I think Richard's nodding on that point.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning there, Alistair, Mark, the flood reinsurance scheme that was introduced over a decade ago after the terrible floods of 2007 and pretty bad ones in 2010. And what that effectively does, it means that everybody in the country can get their house insured. And the insurers who wouldn't necessarily insure houses that are right on the edge of the River Severn because of their track record of flooding can get this reinsurance through Flood Re. And that gives everybody a huge amount of certainty. It means there's no real excuse other than trying to save a few bob, which may be, not the best approach for anyone not to have their home insured in Gloucestershire. So I think that's a key message to everyone. Do get your house insured, however close to the water you live.
Well, it's funny. I remember being down in the flooding in Gloucester with you, Richard, in 2007, standing there. I think was it Mr. Pickles? We had an umbrella and stuff like that. Quite some time ago. Okay, let's go over to you, Priti. Thanks for joining the show. Lovely to see you. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
So for me, one of the top one was the private hospitals to rescue the NHS. And yeah, so for me, I picked this up because I thought There's going to be, I mean, I always focus on the positives. There's so much of backlog. And if we didn't do this, what would have happened? And
Yes, I mean, it's.
yeah,
Have you ever used the private medical stuff yourself, Priti?
I have indeed, yes. Through my previous workplaces, I've been working for corporates before. And as part of that service was I got private medical care. And I have used places like Bupa and Nuffield. And it's great that this proposal is now going to help lots and lots of people. It's a 1 billion proposal, £1 billion proposal. And the backlog that they have is the biggest expansion in healthcare since Blair's government.
I
So,
mean, it's just. I mean, it's the numbers we're talking here is just amazing, isn't it? I don't think they'll ever make it back. What else have you got there, Priti? Have you picked out another story?
yes, I have picked up about the BBC weather app, which predicted 404 degrees Celsius and winds reaching 15,345 miles per hour. And that was for Nottingham. Hurricane and winds.
They'd been listening to Alistair's concerns about climate change.
Exactly.
Definitely,
So this was
definitely.
the glitch there. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We'll go back over to you, Richard. Right. So obviously, unfortunately, you lost your seat. I was there that day as well. Richard, so what have you been doing since then? Because I know it's a bit of a blow, and I don't know the process of actually that. Can we just talk about that a little bit? Takes a bit of a while, doesn't it?
Well, the sort of slightly boring thing is that it actually takes a surprising amount of time to, first of all, make sure that anyone who is working for you is in a new job, and that you've wound down the office, cleared up all the digital equipment, the security alarms, all that sort of thing, handed your office back, 3 months notice. All those sorts of things take a surprising amount of time. But we've also had quite a lot in the family. During the election, my father died, then my mother-in-law died. We interred my younger brother's ashes, and we then had a very happy wedding for our daughter. So there's been a bit of domestic stuff. And then, of course, the Gloucester History Festival is the first 2 weeks, effectively, of September, along with Gloucester Day and the Heritage Open Day weekend. That, I think, was a great success from the feedback we've had so far. Lots of tickets sold, and we went global this year. We got live streaming of all the events that took place, and we'll be, I think, offering those again during the winter when the days are short and the nights long, for people to be able to watch some great speakers, local, national, international. So all of that's taken a bit of time, Mark, but I am now looking at various suggestions as to what I could do to use my time productively, and do something that's got real purpose, causes that I'm interested in, and more news on that as and when things are confirmed and go public.
I just want to talk to you about the History Festival because it is actually an amazing event. How do you see it progressing next? 'Cause some really big. Can you see it? On the same sort of size. Because the thing is, you're restrained, aren't you, by Blackfriars really, and the size and scope there.
Yeah, so you're quite right. In terms of the numbers of people who can physically be at talks, we're constrained by the numbers of Blackfriars, which is 230. We've obviously looked at whether other venues might make sense for some of our biggest name speakers. There's the Cathedral, there's King's School. We tried one event at King's School for Schools actually this year as a sort of taster. But it's an interesting one. And of course, by having live streaming, we can access audiences all around the world and certainly across the country very easily. So it's a case of really of how best to do it that maintains the brand of Gloucester, keeps Blackfriars because it's such a special place, but also allows more people to come and listen and hear some of the great speakers we've got. Over the years, we've had people like the director of GCHQ. Obviously, we had Theresa May give her first festival talk, whatever it was, 18 months ago. We had Dermot McCulloch launch his book on sex and Christianity this year in Blackfriars. So we continue to do things that I think are rather exciting and innovative. But can we find a bigger venue as well as going global? That's an interesting one.
Well, it's certainly, I just think it's absolutely fantastic and I really enjoy it. And also, I get the opportunity to hobnob with a whole load of big stars as well, which always goes down well in my book. So thank
Well,
you
the
ever
great
so
thing
much for that.
is, almost anyone who comes to the festival will have the chance to bump into, talk to, or have their books signed by, people, whether it's William Dalrymple on everything to do with history and India in particular, or indeed magicians. We had a fantastic talk on magic this year.
No, absolutely magic. Well, thanks ever so much for that, Richard. Let's go over to Alistair. Thanks for joining us again. Obviously, a busy chap running the county, North Gloucestershire Borough Council. So, how's the name change gone down?
It's gone down. It's gone down well. We did quite a bit of consultation around this, and we actually got our largest consultation response to date. And it's one of those things. Tewkesbury Borough, great name, but it did sort of focus on Tewkesbury. Now, when the borough was created, Tewkesbury is the biggest settlement. It's not the biggest settlement now, and of course, with the growth of Bishop's Cleeve, Churchdown, Innsworth, all those areas, it didn't quite represent the totality of the borough. And when you're trying to get staff and get everyone to understand, what you're trying to deliver and who the population you serve are, it didn't work. And also, there's quite a bit of confusion between us and the town council, the Tewkesbury Borough Mayor, the Tewkesbury Town Mayor. When the Tewkesbury Borough Mayor turns up in Bishop's Cleeve, people saying, "Well, what's Tewkesbury Mayor doing here?" So we did a lot of work. One of the things I would stress, though, we needed to change our logo anyway. It wasn't designed for digital, and it was clunky and was stretched and pulled. And we had a budget of about 10,000 to do that in house and then put it everywhere as a digital logo. That's the budget we're sticking to for the name change. So this is one of those, you wake up in the morning and all the signs were changed. Digitally were changed, but actually we're not going to change car park signs until they need replacing. We're making a virtue out of doing this on the cheap because it's public money, but it will give us that opportunity from a business perspective to market North Gloucestershire as a place to do business rather than Tewkesbury. And if you ask people outside of the area what's synonymous with Tewkesbury, they'll talk about the Abbey and flooding, which isn't really what you want when you're marketing. So a lot of reasons. People won't notice the difference in I better say the great services rather than the services, for someone makes a joke about that, but the great services we provide, they will just continue.
Okay, well, that leads me very nicely to the garden communities. I'm going to bring up the slide that your comms team kindly shared with us. So let's see if I can get that now. Hold on a second. So it is actually here. So this is the Tewkesbury Garden. Can you all see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So, development principles. We don't need a big slideshow about it, but what I thought about doing was bringing this little map up. Alistair, do you want to just talk us through what the garden, this initiative is, the garden communities?
Certainly, it's about building at scale because if what we've seen with development over the last maybe 20, 30 years is bolt-ons to existing communities. So you get an extra 400 or 1,000 or 1,500 homes and you don't get the infrastructure that's required. But if you build at scale, not only can you increase the quality by working with the developers, on those charter issues, but you can also make sure the infrastructure goes in. So what this scheme looks to do, the first phase, which is north of the A46, is about 5,500 homes, but it will have a local centre, it will have the proper road infrastructure, it will have schools, it will have doctor surgeries, and it will be designed in a way that creates a good mix between urban and countryside features, because more than half of the area will actually be open space. So it's about building at scale, but creating communities rather than just housing development added on to a normal settlement. On the south, for the future, and this ties in with the consultations underway on what to do about a new junction 9A and changing the route of the A46, which the county are running at the moment. There's the opportunity then to build again a significant amount of housing, but that needs to be planned. Again, allowing the development of new communities rather than just housing estates. And of course, with time back to the new government, we've got consultation on increasing the targets for our housing requirement for Gloucester, Cheltenham and Tewkesbury by an additional 9,000 homes over the next 20 years. And this development could absorb that and deliver it in a way that actually creates places where people want to live with all the infrastructure in place. So it's a different, well, it's not a different way, because you think of those historic garden towns and that have been built in the past, but it's a better way, I think, of delivering at scale.
I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of Junction 9A. Are you saying there'll be another junction on the M5 in between Cheltenham and Tewkesbury? Or is
That's
it further up?
no, further down. That's right. The consultation at the moment is around the A46 is part of the strategic highways network, and anyone who's driven that now getting onto Junction 9 recognises that you have to make a guesstimate of how long it's going to take to get through. That's not good for business. That's not good for GDP. In terms of just well, business and people travelling to work. The idea is to look at taking a road from down diagonally across there to a junction 9A between 9 and 10, which would relieve exactly where your cursor's sort of driving. There's a number of routes in the consultation. Significant cost, $750 million plus, but actually the economic benefit nationally is quite significant to improving that road network. Also, the potential to enable a significant development of housing in the area that is between the roads, which, if properly designed, would be new communities and the new infrastructure required. So there's a lot to play for. That consultation's open, runs by the county council. I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, but if you go on their website, you'll find it very easily.
Now, this bit over here, just very, very quickly, this is the new Cotswold outlet that's going to go here. It's really, really sprouting up. If you don't know, the rest of the panel have seen it. It's very impressive. There is a worry, though, that it's going to suck money out of Cheltenham and it's going to suck money out of Gloucester Quays. What's your, and obviously Tewkesbury as well. What's your view on that, Alistair?
It is one of those, always a difficult one. It's the balance that it adds to a geography in total, because there are a lot of hoteliers in Cheltenham thinking it adds to their offer in terms of you come to the area, you get the Regency, you get the festivals, but also you can do that, go to the outlet centre and spend half a day on retail therapy, if I put it that way. For Tewkesbury, I think the real opportunity there is about linked trips. It doesn't particularly overlap with the offer in Tewkesbury, which is independent local shops. And what we're doing, and there is funding coming out of the development to support it, is creating that heritage-based offer in Tewkesbury, the dwell time, the uniqueness of the town, and making sure people, when they plan their day out, plan to go to the outlet centre in the morning and come to the Tewkesbury in the afternoon, go to the Abbey, look around the town, enjoy those delights of the river and things like that. So you have to work at this, because it can't be, and you know how we all react. If you go to a centre like this, by the time you've been there 2 or 3 hours, you sometimes think, I just want to get in the car and go home. We have to work on those linked trips to make this beneficial for Tewkesbury and Cheltenham and Gloucester. So, but it is a significant employer. It will bring, 300, I think, construction jobs, 500 retail jobs, a significant amount of money coming into the local economy, and a lot of jobs. Picking up on Richard's point from the paper earlier, where there is a concern is these are nice, nice jobs in a nice warm environment, dressing smart, good money. It's the impact on people like care jobs and administrative jobs elsewhere in the economy, where you might see people choice being care worker and putting on a nice suit working in the outlet centres. That's the thing we've got to just be careful. It doesn't pull people out of other parts of the employment into this business.
Okay. Well, thanks ever so much for such an in-depth look. I'm sure we'll come back to that afterwards. Priti, let's talk about your bid writing business, please. So, sorry, I forgot the name. Pretty Smart Business Solutions. Sorry, Pretty Smart Business Solutions. What's the company been going? Can you tell us a little bit more about it, please?
Yeah, so I started Pretty Smart Business Solutions Limited this year. Following a redundancy, I've been working with bigger corporates, for quite some time, like Siemens Transmission and Distribution, Scottish and Southern Energy, Caterpillar's Rail Division. I've done quite a bit in the bid world, in the bids and tender sector. So my recent one was I was the head of bid management for eSmart Networks, and that's the redundancy that thought, okay, what shall I do next? And I took the leap of faith and started my business. And so what we offer now is we offer companies help with bidding and tendering. My recent one, I've just seen Alistair's AONB, Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. And I've done a bid for Balfour Beatty called the Cotswolds VIP, Cotswolds Visual Improvement Program. It is a national grid tender for over 100 million. And I've just led that bid for Balfour Beatty on behalf of Balfour Beatty. What it will do is it will remove quite a few pylons, which you can see in some of these areas, about 17 or so. And the overhead lines will be then going underground. And that's going to be about 7.5 kilometers underground. So my expertise is I come in, I help you with your bid. And I have a team as well. We can help you with bid writing, with bid coordination, and leading the bid, doing all the governance that you need for this bid. So that's what I do. Yes, that's my business. And we're now setting up ourselves with the charity sector as well, doing grant applications. So that's another channel that we are moving into. So
What's
that's
been the hardest part of setting up the business itself, Priti? Just completely setting up this year. What's been the hardest part for you? And
the hardest part is sometimes finding the right people, because I do bring in associates to help me, turn around. So if I have 2 or 3 bids that are on the go, then I do bring in people that I can rely on. And that's, I think, the niche, the kind of people who have the background. And I'm building that up as I go along.
how have you found sort of networking and growing it from before? Because obviously that must have been quite a new thing for you to do as well, suddenly rocking up at business breakfast or at the university or...
Yeah, I relied a lot on Eventbrite. So just keeping constantly on to say what's going on, what's next, what's next. And I think your network is your net worth. And then I started putting things on LinkedIn. So, and that's what led me to Balfour Beatty's, that bid that I just did. My boss there, ex-boss from SSE, spotted me on there to say, oh, I don't have capacity, but would you? And I said, oh, yeah, please put me forward. And then it was an interview that happened on a Friday. They offered me the job on the Saturday. I started on Monday.
Absolutely fantastic. So I've got to ask you then, what's your top 3 tips for writing a bid? Because I'll be honest with you, I've had to write bids and stuff, and I'm absolutely useless. And it's just one of those, we don't apply for stuff because it's so difficult. So what would you say is your top 3 tips?
So for me, the top 3 is, first of all, understand the client's requirements. What are their needs? If you don't know that, then you can't really put forward a proposal for them. That's first one. Then highlight your value proposition. What is your unique selling point? What's your benefits? What kind of benefits are you going to offer on this proposal? And then close it up with a good presentation. I mean, when I say presentation, is make sure that your proposal is structured well, it's formatted well, and then you've done you're compliant and you've done whatever you need to do with the checks and everything. So that's, for me, is the top 3.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much. I think what we'll do is we'll round up. We'll find out what's the pick of the punchlines. Thanks ever so much for that, Priti. Richard, you want to come in quick? I could see you.
I was just going to quickly say, look, I think this business of bid writing is incredibly important. It's important to individuals if they're trying, for example, to get pension credit. A lot of people don't know how to tackle a big form. It's very important to charities. Again, same lack of experience of writing bids, and actually it's relevant to things like history festivals as well. So I think that Priti is probably on a winner on this one. The biggest thing is working out what is the jargon of the sort of sector that you need to include in the bid to tick the various boxes that people want to hear, and make sure that those really reflect the business or the charity that you're promoting. And I think if Priti Smart Business Solutions can do that, I think she's going to be on a winner.
Oh, thank you for that, Richard. I appreciate
I totally agree. There's so many charity out there that just can't do it. They don't have the skill set to it. So, no, absolutely brilliant. So, unfortunately, we are running out of time. So, Richard, what have we picked out from this week's punchline, please? What's the story that's caught your eye?
So the story
we don't have long left, by the way.
Yeah, the story that caught my eye, Mark, was the story of the last space in the railway triangle, that bit of land that straddles between the entrance to Gloucester off Metz Way and then the suburb of Elmbridge on the other side. And you will remember 15 years ago, that was just a jungle of weeds, wasn't used for anything at all. The access road was put in, a developer called LXB got moving, Morrison's came in, and various other businesses. And now the last bit of the jigsaw puzzle is complete. So I think it's really good that Punchline has spotted this and given it a bit of a highlight notice, and that everybody in Gloucester can see that although at the time people were very sceptical as to whether the railway triangle could become a jobs-based place, but it's succeeded in doing that. And it's a good example of, if you really set after something with purpose, rather as Alistair's trying to do with his garden communities, you may well be able to surprise people.
Totally. And the other thing is there were talk about putting King's Own there, you remember? At
Gloucester
one point.
Rugby. You mean Gloucester Rugby?
Gloucester Rugby.
Yeah. No, I think the owner of the time quite rightly said that's a non-starter for fans.
No, and it was a complete mess as you came into Gloucester, and it has been completely transformed. Thanks for picking that. That was my pick of the week as well, Richard. Priti, I'm going to go to you. What's your pick of the punchlines this week, please?
So for me, this was on the 9th of October, Gloucestershire Library celebrate Year of Success. And it's great to see so many of our libraries, increase their footfall. So there's been 11% increase in the footfall of these libraries. Particularly for me, I live in Charlton Kings. And in Charlton Kings, we have had a new initiative called the Library of Things, and which was such a successful launch for our little community here. Now it has, it has given a library of things. What it means is it's going to offer you things for a 1 week period, like pressure washers, drills, gazebos. I think for our family, we've gone and taken for a week's period hedge cutting trimmer from there. Now, what it has done is people have been able to borrow about 195 items in this period of 1 year, and that has reduced 75 tons of carbon and then the community has the savings for the local community has been about 23.5K per year. So I think that's a big thing for us, really. And if we can expand this kind of an initiative to other parts, I think that would be really good. And that was great. Which was put up by Gloucestershire Punchline.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much for that. What a great idea. I've got a hedge trimmer you can borrow, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Mark. We've moved house, so we may not need now, but yeah, with the last house.
Alistair, what have you picked out the punchline space?
Yeah, it was just one from the 8th of October about back to school boost retail sales. And the thing that struck me, this is September sales, and it just made me think, gosh, people do try and drag out the summer holiday as long as possible before they go and buy the tech and the kids' clothing if it hits their September ones. I mean, I nearly went for the Gloucester New Beer Cafe from the 10th, which is close to my heart. Beer, that is, but I thought I'd stick with retail as a theme.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a new Belgian beer place, 23 different types of beer. It's the longest bar I've ever seen. It might even be the longest bar in Gloucestershire, actually. It's like 5 meters long, and it's opening this Saturday just on Brunswick Road. And the guy's put £350,000 of his own money. Maybe that would be my story of the pick of the punchline as well. A really nice guy from outside of Gloucestershire, from Bristol, who's invested £350,000 into the city, creating 15 jobs. On the back of Dr. Foster's as well, another person from Hereford investing £500,000. There's a lot of good stuff happening in the city as well.
And I think, Mark, that's why it's so important across the county that we don't end up talking ourselves down. There are good things happening. We got to identify them, give them a bit of the oxygen of publicity, and not allow some of the gloomier stories to sort of overwhelm us, because there will be some difficult decisions, I think, that we're going to hear about. For example, the Levelling Up Fund Award for the Eastgate Centre and Greyfriars. We will need to know what's happened to that. And not all of these things are going to come through under the new government. So we've got to keep looking at how we can stimulate private investment that will help fill the gaps and offer the new jobs.
Totally agree there. Okay, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to say thank you to my wonderful panel. Thanks for joining us this morning. A massive thanks to our sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And finally, a big thank you for everybody who's watching. Don't forget, we'll be back next week. But in the meantime, please like, share, and subscribe to the show. And we'll be back next week. And it's all in the punchline. Cheerio. Bye.